What if we told you that behind the scenes of the global COVID vaccine race, a shadowy battle was fought, not with syringes, but with secretive psychological subterfuge? In the midst of the 2020 pandemic, the scientific community scrambled to develop vaccines to halt the spread. But set against this unprecedented international effort by the scientific community, a geopolitical war was playing out.
China tried to say that it was caused by American soldiers. It comes from China.
Scapegoating China cannot whitewash the US.
We now know, thanks to a Reuters investigation, that beyond the back-and-forth accusations, the US military was waging a covert anti-vax operation. The victim of this campaign was not the Chinese government, but the citizens of developing countries desperately in need of access to coronavirus vaccines. So how exactly did the US government suppress China's COVID vaccines? This tweet is just one phony post from at least 450 accounts linked to the US military's covert campaign, where they impersonated members of the public online. It asks, can China be trusted if it tries to hide that its vaccine contains pork gelatin? Above an image of a man with syringes. On his back is the word China. The Pentagon's campaign particularly targeted Muslims in Central Asia and the Middle East to spread fear that China's vaccines contain pork and was therefore forbidden by Islamic law, at a time when the virus was killing tens of thousands of people each day. Sinovac, China's leading vaccine, always maintained their vaccine was manufactured free of porcine materials.
Now to President Trump's threat to ban TikTok, out of fear that the link to China poses a security risk.
The US and China now are at war. It's not a commercial war, as stated, but it's really a tech war.
So, by the time COVID-19 was spreading around the world, the US had already been operating online campaigns against the Chinese government for 2 years. In 2019, Trump authorized the CIA to launch bogus online identities on Chinese social media aimed at turning public opinion in China against its government. So when the vaccine rollout began at the start of 2021, the stage was already set for further political contest. Early in the pandemic, it was widely accepted that no one was safe until everyone was safe. But richer countries vaccinated their populations at a much higher rate than developing countries. For example, Canada and the US hoarded more vaccines than they could ever use, with America taking a US-first approach.
American citizens have first priority to receive American vaccines.
In contrast, in June 2021, China delivered more than 350 million vaccine doses to more than 80 countries, many of which were given for free.
中国新冠疫苗研发完成，将作为全球公共产品。
This move by China, along with continued accusations aimed at the US, were seen as motivators in the rollout of the Pentagon's Psy-ops campaign. Also high on the list was the fear of the US losing its spot to China as Southeast Asia's most favoured ally, something it could feel happening in the Philippines, where then-President Rodrigo Duterte had been getting closer to China and was promised first place in the queue for their vaccines. At that time, he also vowed that the Philippines would no longer challenge Beijing's aggressive expansion in the South China Sea, thereby overturning a key security understanding Manila had long maintained with Washington. The Philippines was one of the nations hardest hit by COVID in Southeast Asia. From as early as spring 2020, the US military had been targeting Filipinos with social media posts, aimed at making them more hesitant to take China's vaccines at a time when Sinovac was the only option available. Almost all of these were created in the summer of 2020 and centered on the slogan, China Ang Virus. This post reads, "Do you want that? COVID came from China and vaccines came from China." By mid-2021, deaths soared, with only around 2% of the population having taken their first dose. And by May 2022, only around 12% of Filipinos had received booster doses. Overcoming vaccine hesitancy can be a life or death challenge. A study from 2021 showed that high vaccine hesitancy could increase deaths by up to 8 times compared with ideal vaccination uptake. It appeared that the US Psy-ops campaign had been successful, as countries across Asia opted for the US-made vaccines over China's. It was widely reported that most Filipinos had rejected the Chinese-made vaccines and had swamped the vaccination centres offering Pfizer shots. As time went on, Pfizer and AstraZeneca overtook Sinovac's early distribution success. And in mid-2021, the US Psy-ops campaign was terminated. Over the past decade, some US national security officials have advocated for a return to the aggressive clandestine propaganda operations that the US employed against its rivals during the Cold War. The COVID-19 pandemic galvanized that drive to wage them against China. But health experts are quite certain that anti-vaccine rhetoric proved deadly during the coronavirus pandemic. Which is why campaigners say it's time to ban intelligence operations from interfering in public health. A quote from a military officer involved with the Pentagon's COVID Psy-ops operation highlights exactly this point. We weren't looking at this from a public health perspective. We were looking at how we could drag China through the mud. Thank you so much for watching, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date with what we're up to. It's Complicated is a new channel powered by Guardian Journalism, and we want to help make some of the big stories and global events a little bit easier to understand by providing you with clarity and context where we can, and presenting underrepresented stories from around the world. And we'd love to hear from you as well, so let us know what you'd like us to cover in the comments and community tab, and we'll see you next time.